Hello, everybody. This is Gertrude Mache here in Wellington, New Zealand. Today, I'm speaking to yet another fascinating author by the name of Tuan Marais, who is based in Cape Town, South Africa. Tuan, welcome.
Thank you, Gertrude. Good morning to you. It's late here at night, but I'm ready for you.
Tuan, you have written a very interesting book, which I had the pleasure of reading in one weekend, and I could not put it down, called Painted Devils. It is a whimsical tale of your childhood growing up in Zanzibar. What inspired you to write this book?
Gertrude, there were probably two reasons. Firstly, I had a story to tell about an eccentric mother and living on an island with her, and the story of a revolution. I think the second reason was I needed my children to understand some of my dysfunctional behavior while they were growing up, and I think giving them the story to read certainly helped them to understand that. I think it was, in fact, I know it was Larkin, it's in the book, a poet called Larkin, who wrote these words. And he said, "They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you." I called the book Painted Devils and the Land of Ordinary Men. And I did that, thereby, in fact, hangs the story, because my mother said to me once, "I didn't undergo the discomfort of childbirth for you to become just another ordinary man. Ordinary men are so dreadfully dull." And to set me apart from the crowd, of course, what did she do? She called me Tuan. Now, at the time in the East, Tuan was a name of significance, but in the West, the only other creature to carry my name was an orangutan in London's Whipsnade Zoo.
What does the name actually mean?
It means Bwana or Sahib or Lord and Master, which of course didn't make it easy for me. Anyway, fortunately, most people in the West didn't know what it meant, so I was fairly safe. But thereafter, throughout my young life, she attempted to mold me into a blend of Nijinsky and Byron. And in fact, she once said to me, "Confront life with poise and good taste, a little steel in the veins and poetry in the heart. And whatever you do, don't drive a Mercedes-Benz." Well, that explained her logic. We were in South Africa at the time, and at the age of 5, she divorced my father and put me into a boarding school and escaped to Zanzibar with her new husband. And then when I was 9, she abducted me from the boarding school and brought me up to Zanzibar to live with her. At the time, Zanzibar was a protectorate, a British protectorate ruled by the Omani Arabs, and I knew it as the land of Sinbad. I loved it. I was allowed to run free like a feral child for probably 18 months. My mother kept me out of school. I learned the cultures on the island. I learned to make fish traps. I was taught by an old Swahili fisherman to do that. And I was taught by an Omani pearl diver to spearfish. And my first girlfriend was a fragile, lovely Persian girl. And I was a happy lad. I mean, I learned a lot of things. I learned about slavery and adventurers like Livingstone and Speke and Burton and Stanley. And I learned about Tipu Tib, the infamous slaver, and how the Arabs on the island had such an influence on Central and East Africa at the time.
One of the things that I found about your book that really intrigued me is it reminded me of a book I read when I was in high school called My Family and Other Animals. Your descriptions are so vivid. It's almost like I was in the story with you, and I absolutely love the journey of you flying to Zanzibar from South Africa and meeting your first love. Tell us a little bit about her.
Oh my God, you enjoyed that, obviously.
I'm a romantic at heart. What can I say?
I can see that. I could see that. I was only 9, for heaven's sake. I mean, she was 24, and she was the air hostess, and what else could she do but look after me? But she was divine. and she was lovely and gentle with me. And yes, it was my first love. And you never forget your first love. You know that.
That is so true. That is so true. And just spending that time with you seems to have given her a lot of clarity about her life, because this is a young lady who was just about to get married. And what do you think it was about her sitting in that plane for those 2 days traveling with you that made her change her mind not to get married?
Well, I think it was the fact that I was um, just a witness to her. And there was nothing that sinister about me. There was nothing that I wanted other than just to be with her. And what better sounding board can you have than the wisdom of a young child? And that's what I was. I was 9 years old, and my answers were simple and direct, and it helped her. And I think she found peace from that. And as you know, she wrote to me afterwards, and it was a great experience in my life. I've never forgotten her.
Your life went full circle. Now, growing up in this boarding school, you had a very, very, very traumatic time settling in the school, the corporal punishment. Do you think that it's toughened you to be the man that you are today? What did you get out of that experience?
Well, it wasn't so much the corporal punishment. That went with school normally in those days, and I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I believe in it today. I think my peers at school were the ones that helped me through whatever problems I may have had, because you don't survive in a boarding environment unless you fit in with your peers. And I learned very quickly to do the right thing at the right time, and in fact made some wonderful firm friendships. And they're still with me today. 50 years later, I still see my schoolmates. We're in touch regularly. So, yep, it was my peers that helped me through that.
Well, I'm really excited because I might just meet some of your peers up in Tauranga here in New Zealand. You said you have a group of friends who are from New Zealand and you're still in touch with them, and you've just recently celebrated a reunion. Is that correct?
Indeed. In fact, I should have been there, but I didn't go. I went to the last one in Nairobi a few years ago. Um, so, yes, the story is the story of my life and how I adjusted, but it took a turn because although I was at boarding school and traveling home to this paradise of Zanzibar, there was trouble on the horizon because in 1963, the British handed Zanzibar back to the Arabs in the form of a constitutional monarchy, which was fine, but the Arabs only represented 15% of the population. And the way the British constructed the parliament, the Africans, who were the majority, remained in the absolute minority in parliament, and that made them very unhappy. And at the time, a fellow by the name of John Gideon Okello, who was an itinerant Ugandan, happened on the island at this crucial time. And he had nothing to do with the island or its history, or its future for that matter, other than the wherewithal to foment a revolution, and it was a brutal revolution. And that's where the story changes. So I was starting now to learn that life was a little more real than I had known it. And it was the end of an era for the Arabs on the African coast. It was the beginning of the end for Rhodesia, Mozambique, and South Africa, because at the time of the revolution, the communists used the opportunity to move into the island. I'm talking about Russia, China, Bulgaria, you name it. They moved in quickly and the West lost out. And it was the end of colonialism on the African continent.
So one of the things
Um,
you've managed to capture with this story is to really frame historic events from your perspective. And I think to anybody who's wanting to read this book, it is just amazing how you have encapsulated that. But one of the things I really want to get out of you today, Tuan, is what was it like for you in writing this book? You know that I work with a lot of authors and people get stuck, people aren't sure that their story is worth telling. What would you say to another person who is sitting on the fence and thinking, I don't want to put my story out there? What would be your advice?
my advice would be that you should be true to your emotions. if you believe you have a story to tell, firstly, it must be sincere. There's no point in telling a story without sincerity. Don't be afraid. There's a story in so many of us. Some stories are not worth telling, but there are so many that are. And it's really a question about how you go about it. You have to engage with your audience. And in doing that, don't be afraid of your emotions. Avoid nostalgia, avoid sentiment, and avoid regret. Keep the writing simple. Don't over-embellish. And I think one of the keys is to be self-deprecating in this whole thing. Try and be humorous. You needn't avoid the ugly side of life, but make it a story that people will enjoy. They need to take the journey with you. And anyone who feels that they can write has to start somewhere and begin with that. Begin with those principles and take it along that path.
Well, I know that the reason why there aren't many authors out there is because people do find it difficult to buckle down and tell that story. So what tips, ideas would you give to a writer to complete a book? 3 tips.
3 tips. Look for someone who you know knows something about writing. Spend a little time with them and try and tell your story first, in whatever form, be it verbally or written or whatever, and get an honest criticism from them. That would be the first thing. I would also say rely on absolute integrity in everything that you do. Follow your heart, not always your head. Follow your heart, but when it gets to following your heart, make sure that your head plays a part, because you can go off at tangents. You would have to rewrite it. Probably the right idea would be to put everything down and then prune it and pare it and pull out the core of the story, and always make sure there is a theme to that story, a beginning and an end.
Fantastic. Now, are there any other new books in the horizon?
No, I'm still trying to get over the hangover of this one, because self-publishing is not an easy thing to do. And in fact, the memoir is always referred to as the kiss of death by publishers. So unless you're a famous individual, which I'm not, it really is a bit of a kiss of death. So you do have to do it on your own. And that's why in many ways I'm talking to you today. Yes, I would love to write some more. And I think there is a lot more that I would like to write about. And having got as far as I have, I've found that the response has been fantastic, and I've enjoyed a lot of accolades I didn't expect. So it tells me that what I did was good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for this interview, Tuan. I wish you luck in all of your future writing endeavors. And I really would love to keep in touch with you and just send me the next book. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed the first one, you'll enjoy the next one. I'll tell you when it's ready.
Thank you, Tuan. Take care.
Thanks, Gertrude. You too.
Bye.
Bye.